The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive ring of metal and crystal that had stood for 10,000 years. Today it would witness the end of everything the Galactic Council had built. Ambassador Kelth Prime stood before the holographic display, his 6 arms trembling as he watched another star system fall to the Vrax dominion. Red markers spread across the galactic map like a plague, each one representing billions of lives lost or enslaved. "We have no choice left," Kelth Prime said, his translator converting his clicking speech into the common tongue. Around him, the representatives of 11 other species sat in their suspended seats, their faces showing the same despair. The Vrax had swept through half the galaxy in just 30 years. Their weapons were devastating, their tactics merciless, and their empire grew stronger with each conquest. Council Speaker Norvath, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell, pulsed with dim light. "If we activate the ancient beacon, we cannot predict what will answer." The old warnings were clear. It was sealed for a reason. "The warning spoke of dangers," Kelth Prime replied, his voice sharp with desperation. "But we face extinction now. What worse fate could find us?" He gestured to the map where their last strongholds glowed in fading blue. 3 systems remain. 3. Out of the hundreds we once protected. The Vrax will be here in 6 cycles. We need help or we need to die with honor. The vote was swift. 11 species agreed. Only the energy beings abstained, too ancient to feel fear anymore. Kelth Prime descended into the depths of the council station, past layers of security that had not been opened in millennia. The ancient beacon sat in a chamber of its own, a device that predated the council itself. No one truly understood its technology, but the records were clear. It had once called for help when the galaxy faced its last great threat. That help had come, had saved them all, and then had vanished back into the unknown. Kelth Prime activated the beacon. Energy pulsed through the ancient machine and a signal shot out into space faster than light itself, aimed at coordinates marked only as the dead zone on their charts. A region of space their sensors could never penetrate, a place where the ancients supposedly slept. The signal traveled for weeks through the void, passing through dimensions that normal ships could never access. It crossed 8,000 light-years in a matter of days, and then it reached a small yellow star on the edge of a spiral arm, a star with 8 planets and 1 moon where billions of beings lived, built, fought, and dreamed. A species that called themselves humans. Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station picked up the signal at 0347 hours, Greenwich Mean Time. Dr. Sarah Chen was drinking her 5th coffee of the night shift when every screen in the facility began screaming alerts. The signal was clearly artificial, clearly alien, and clearly directed at their solar system. Within 6 hours, the UN Security Council convened an emergency session. Within 12 hours, every major government on Earth knew that humanity was not alone. Within 24 hours, the signal had been decoded. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. It was a distress call, a desperate plea for help from beings facing extinction, and it had been sent to Earth. Fleet Admiral Marcus Chen stood before the assembled leaders of Earth and presented what humanity had been building in secret for the last 50 years. When radio signals from distant stars had been detected decades ago, humanity had prepared, not for war but for the possibility of it. 200 warships hung in orbit around Mars, built in hidden shipyards, crewed by volunteers who trained in secrecy. Ships that used experimental faster-than-light drives reverse-engineered from physics that the alien signal itself suggested. They asked for help, Admiral Chen said simply. "They're dying out there. The signal shows images, planets burning, refugee ships destroyed, civilians massacred. They don't have much time." The debate raged for 3 days. Some argued humanity had no business in alien wars. Others said the signal was a trap. But in the end, humanity's better nature won. The same instinct that made humans run into burning buildings to save strangers, that made them dive into freezing water to rescue drowning children, that made them stand between the helpless and harm. That instinct made the decision. "We go," said UN Secretary General Amara Okafor, "not because we seek glory or conquest, but because someone asked for help and we have the power to answer." Admiral Chen selected his fleet carefully. 100 combat vessels, 50 support ships, 20 hospital ships, and 30 construction vessels. 20,000 crew members, 10,000 Marines, 5,000 engineers and medical staff, and a message recorded in every language of Earth, translated into the mathematical language used in the beacon. We heard your call. We are coming. Hold on. The fleet launched from Mars orbit on a Tuesday morning. Families gathered to watch their sons, daughters, mothers, and fathers depart for a war 8,000 light-years away. The ship's experimental drives activated and reality bent around them. Space folded, compressed, and the fleet vanished from Earth's solar system. Ambassador Kelth Prime was preparing his people for their final stand when the sensors detected something impossible. Ships, hundreds of them, emerging from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They were crewed by Council standards, covered in armor plating and bristling with weapon ports. They moved with aggressive confidence like predators entering a hunting ground. A transmission came through. This is Fleet Admiral Marcus Chen of the United Earth Fleet. We received your distress signal. We're here to help. Tell us where to fight. Kelth Prime felt all 6 of his heart surge with something he thought he had lost forever. Hope. Terrifying, dangerous, beautiful hope. He sent back the coordinates of the Vrax assault force that was 3 days away from destroying their last refugee fleet. And he whispered a prayer to gods he no longer believed in. Please let them be enough. The Kelthera system burned under the assault of the Vrax Dominion fleet. 60 dreadnoughts surrounded the ragged remains of the Council's refugee armada, like wolves circling wounded prey. Commander Jatek watched from his flagship's command throne as another Council vessel's shields failed. His targeting systems locked on, and energy beams sliced through the helpless ship's hull. Escape pods scattered like seeds on the wind. His ships destroyed most of them. Mercy was for the weak. Sir, we're detecting multiple faster-than-light signatures, his sensor officer reported, mandibles clicking nervously. Unknown configuration. They're emerging close, very close. Jathek's 4 eyes focused on the tactical display. 200 contacts appeared 3 million kilometers from his fleet. He felt a moment of concern, then dismissed it. These were crude ships, primitive designs, probably some Council species he hadn't encountered yet. They would die like all the others. Destroy them, he ordered. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the situation develop on the main screen. The alien refugee ships were battered, their hulls breached, atmosphere venting into space. Beyond them, the enemy fleet sat in perfect formation. Confident. Arrogant. Status report, Chen said calmly. 87 Council vessels still functional, sir. Most are heavily damaged. Enemy force number 60 capital ships, at least 200 support craft. Their weapons appear to be directed energy, possibly plasma-based. Shields are standard force field technology. And our railguns will go through those shields like paper, Chen said quietly. Launch all fighters. All ships arm nuclear warheads. Prepare kinetic bombardment pattern Sierra 7. Show them what humans do to bullies. The human fleet accelerated forward at speeds that shocked both sides. Council ships moved with grace and precision. Vrax ships moved with organized power. Human ships moved like they were angry. Engines burned at maximum thrust. Point defense systems came online. And launch bays opened to release hundreds of smaller craft. Jathek watched the human fleet charge directly at his position. No formation. No tactics, just raw aggression. He almost felt insulted. All weapons free. Target their engines. We'll capture some for study. The first exchange of fire changed everything. Vrax energy beams struck human shields and armor, scorching metal but failing to penetrate. The Council had developed energy weapons because they were precise and clean. They could disable without destroying. Humans had developed something different. Railgun slugs, each one weighing several tons, accelerated to a fraction of the speed of light, struck the Vrax shields. The shields flickered, failed, and the slugs continued through. They punched through armor, through decks, through crew compartments, and out the other side. One shot from a human frigate crippled a Vrax dreadnought. The aliens had never faced kinetic weapons at these velocities. Evasive maneuvers, Jathek shouted, but human weapons tracked his ships with frightening accuracy. Missiles followed. Not the slow-moving projectiles the Council used, but fusion-powered weapons that adjusted their course mid-flight. Nuclear warheads detonated against shields, and the electromagnetic pulses shut down Vrax systems across the battlefield. Then came the fighters. Human pilots flew with reckless precision, weaving between Vrax ships, targeting weapon emplacements and sensor arrays. They didn't fight with honor or restraint. They fought to kill. One human fighter, damaged and losing atmosphere, deliberately crashed into a Vrax cruiser's bridge. Both exploded in a ball of flame. What are these creatures? Jothek demanded, watching his fleet fall apart. 20 ships destroyed in the first 10 minutes. 30. His weapons couldn't track the human vessels fast enough. Their tactics made no sense. They sacrificed their own ships to protect the Council refugees. They concentrated fire on any Vrax ship that targeted the helpless. Commander Sarah Okonkwo led her marine assault team onto a Vrax heavy cruiser that had been crippled by railgun fire. The boarding pods punched through the hull, and her team poured into the alien ship wearing powered armor and carrying weapons designed for close combat. The Vrax crew had never faced borders before. Their civilization fought clean wars in space. Hand-to-hand combat was beneath them. Okonkwo's team cleared the ship deck by deck, room by room. The Vrax were larger than humans, stronger with natural armor plating. But humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They knew every dirty trick: flashbang grenades, cutting through walls to flank enemies, using the ship's own systems against the crew. In 40 minutes, the Vrax cruiser was under human control, and Okonkwo planted the UN flag on its bridge. Jothek ordered the retreat when his fleet had been reduced to 30 operational ships. His warriors, who had conquered a dozen species, fled before these primitive mammals from an unknown star. He transmitted everything back to the Dominion. Every tactic, every weapon, every death. They don't fight like any species we've encountered, he reported. They fight like they have nothing to lose and everything to prove. They fight like demons. The Battle of Kelthera ended after 4 hours. 30 human ships were destroyed, 3,000 crew lost. But the Council refugee fleet was saved. The Vrax retreated, leaving behind their dead and their wounded. Admiral Chen walked through the recovered Council station and saw beings that could barely believe they were alive. Ambassador Kelth Prime approached him slowly, his translator struggling to find words. Your species. You fight with such violence, such brutality. You saved us, but at what cost to yourselves? Chen looked at the alien, this being that had evolved on a peaceful world where cooperation was instinct and conflict was rare. We fight like this because we know what it means to lose everything. We've done it to each other for our entire history. We learned that if you're going to fight, you fight to win. You fight to protect those who can't protect themselves. We didn't come here to be civilized. We came here to help. The Council species gathered to meet humanity for the first time. They were terrified and grateful in equal measure. These humans had saved them with tactics that violated every rule of warfare the Council had developed over millennia. They had killed without hesitation, sacrificed without question, and fought with a ferocity that seemed almost evil. But they had answered the call. When the galaxy cried out for help, humanity had come, and that changed everything. The Council sanctuary world of Thelvas had never seen war. Its cities were built from living crystal that grew in beautiful patterns. Its people moved through gardens that stretched between the buildings, and violence was so foreign to their culture that they had no word for murder in their language. When the human fleet arrived in orbit, the Council population watched with mixed feelings of gratitude and fear. Admiral Chen accepted the invitation to visit the surface with a small delegation. Commander Sarah Okonkwo walked beside him, along with Dr. James Park, humanity's chief xenobiologist, and Ambassador Liu Wei, who had been hastily trained in first contact protocols during the journey from Earth. They descended through the atmosphere in a shuttle that looked brutally industrial compared to the elegant Council ships. The welcome ceremony was awkward. Ambassador Kelth Prime tried to present Admiral Chen with a crown of living flowers, but Chen's biology rejected them. The flowers withered at his touch. The symbolism was not lost on anyone present. The Council representatives were herbivores from worlds where food was abundant and cooperation necessary for survival. Humans were omnivores from a planet that had tried to kill them at every opportunity. Your world, Dr. Park explained gently to the assembled Council members, you evolved in paradise. Earth is what we call a death world. Our gravity is higher than most of yours. Our atmosphere is corrosive. Our weather can kill in minutes. Our planet has mass extinction events every few million years. We evolved to survive because nothing was given to us for free. A Council member from the avian Skeltar species chirped through her translator. But you have such capacity for violence. We watched the battle recordings. You destroyed ships with such enthusiasm. You even crashed your own vessels into the enemy. Why would you throw away lives like that? Okonkwo stepped forward, her face hard. because that pilot knew 30,000 refugees were on the ship behind him. He made a choice. We all make that choice when we put on the uniform. Some things are worth dying for. The cultural clash deepened over the following days. Human military advisors began training Council defense forces, and the differences became painful. Council ships fought in formations designed to minimize casualties on both sides. They targeted engines and weapons, trying to disable rather than destroy. They warned enemy ships before firing. They retreated when losses exceeded 10%. You're fighting a war like it's a game, Major Sarah Okonkwo told a group of Council military commanders. She pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's history. This is World War II, 60 million dead. This is the Mongol conquests, 40 million dead. This is World War I, 20 million dead. We know what total war looks like. We know what happens when you fight to win. Ambassador Kelth Prime watched the historical footage with growing horror. Humans fighting humans with chemical weapons, nuclear bombs, fire that burned entire cities. How did your species survive? How are you not extinct? Because we learned, Ambassador Liu said quietly. We learned that war is horror. That's why we unified. That's why we stopped fighting each other. But we also learned that sometimes, the only way to stop evil is to meet it with overwhelming force. The Vraks don't care about honor. They don't care about your rules. They care about conquest. Human training methods shocked the Council forces. Humans practiced boarding actions, ground combat, and asymmetric warfare. They taught the Council how to set ambushes, how to use the environment as a weapon, how to target supply lines and communication networks. These were tactics that the civilized galaxy had abandoned thousands of years ago. A faction within the Council, led by Speaker Norvath, grew increasingly vocal about the human presence. They are corrupting our values, Norvath pulsed through her crystalline form. Look at what they teach our young warriors: deception, surprise attacks, targeting infrastructure. These methods may win battles, but they destroy what makes us civilized. Admiral Chen met with Norvath privately. I understand your concerns. We humans have debated the same questions for centuries. When is violence justified? When does the warrior become the monster? But I ask you this. If the Vraks conquer your worlds, will they care that you fought honorably? Will they spare your children because you followed the rules? Perhaps there are fates worse than death, Norvath replied. Perhaps becoming like you is one of them. The word stung, but Chen understood. These beings had never known humanity's struggles. They had never faced extinction from their own planet, their own species, their own mistakes. They looked at humans and saw monsters who could save them. They weren't entirely wrong. Meanwhile, in the Vraks Dominion capital, Empress Xalvara studied the recordings from Kalthara. Her intelligence officers had analyzed every aspect of human technology and tactics. They had also captured human data cores from destroyed ships. What they found changed everything. Earth, her chief intelligence officer reported. That's their homeworld. Coordinates here. It's in a region we mapped as uninteresting frontier space. Low resource value. The planet itself is gravitationally intense, thermally unstable, and biologically dangerous. No wonder they fight like cornered predators. Their entire world taught them to be this way. Xalvara made her decision with cold logic. The humans fight for the Council. They have turned the war against us. But they are far from home, and their industrial base is limited. We will send a fleet to their homeworld. We will conquer it or we will burn it. When the humans learn their families are dead, they will break, or they will come home abandoning the Council. Either way, we win. The Vraks assembled a fleet of 800 ships. It was the largest military force they had ever committed to a single operation. They would jump through the dimensions directly to Earth's solar system. The humans would have no warning, no time to prepare. It would be a massacre. On Thelvas, human intelligence officers intercepted fragmentary communications about a major Vraks fleet movement. Dr. Park and his team worked around the clock to decode the data. When they finally cracked it, Admiral Chen was in a strategy session with Council commanders. Park burst into the room without protocol. Sir, we have a problem. A major problem. The Vraks are sending a fleet to Earth, 800 ships. They'll be there in 3 weeks. The room fell silent. Admiral Chen felt his blood run cold. Earth, his home, his family, his entire species. And he was 8,000 light-years away with only 200 ships. The fleet he had brought was all humanity had. There was no reserve force. There were no reinforcements. Kelth Prime reached out with one of his 6 arms. We can send our forces to help. We owe you everything. Your forces can barely defend yourselves, Chen said, his voice tight. And your ships are too slow. You'd never reach Earth in time. He looked at his officers, saw the same horror in their faces. They all had families on Earth. We have to split the fleet. Half goes home. Half stays here to help you. You would leave us? Norvath asked. After we finally have hope? We would leave you with a fighting chance and the training to use it, Okonkwo said. But Admiral, with respect, we need more than half the fleet to defend Earth. The Council needs us too, Chen replied. We split down the middle. 100 ships go home, 100 stay, and we pray it's enough for both. He activated his communicator. Send a priority message to Earth, all channels. Tell them the Vraks are coming. Tell them to prepare for war. Tell them humanity stands at the crossroads and we chose to stand at both. The message reached Earth 48 hours before the Vraks fleet would arrive. UN Secretary-General Amara Okafor stood before the Emergency Global Assembly, broadcast to every screen on the planet. Her face was calm, but her eyes carried the weight of what was coming. Citizens of Earth, she began, today we learned the cost of extending our hand to the stars. An enemy we have never met, an empire that knows nothing of us except that we dared to help the helpless is coming to destroy our world. They are bringing 800 warships. They expect to find us unprepared, divided, and weak. They are wrong. The broadcast showed images from the Kelthera battle, human ships fighting impossible odds, Marines boarding enemy vessels, the faces of the men and women who had answered the call for help. Our fleet is split. Half remains in the galaxy to protect those who called for aid. Half is racing home but will arrive too late. We must defend ourselves. We have 48 hours to prepare for the greatest battle in human history. Okafor paused, letting the reality sink in. I am not asking for panic. I am not asking for surrender. I am asking every human being to remember who we are. We survived ice ages. We survived plagues. We survived ourselves. We will survive this. For the next 48 hours we work. After that we fight. The world mobilized with terrifying efficiency. Hidden shipyards around Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn burst into full production. Civilian spacecraft were retrofitted with weapons. Mining lasers became particle beams. Transport ships received armor plating and missile pods. Factories that had been secretly building military components for 50 years went to 24-hour production schedules. Dr. Lisa Zhang coordinated the defense network from the moon. She had been building it for 30 years, ever since humanity detected the first alien signals. Hundreds of railgun platforms hidden in asteroid bases came online. Nuclear mines were positioned in orbital patterns around Earth. Kinetic kill satellites moved into formation. Drone swarms were activated, each one carrying enough explosive force to cripple a ship. We can't match their numbers, Zhang told her team, but we can make them pay for every meter of space they take. We turn the entire solar system into a kill zone. On Earth, recruitment centers were overwhelmed. Millions volunteered to crew the hastily armed civilian ships. Retired military personnel returned to service. University students trained in weapons they had only seen in museums. A generation raised in peace prepared for war. Major Chen Wei, the admiral's daughter, commanded the defense station on Luna. She watched her screens as more ships came online every hour. Cargo haulers with railguns welded to their hulls, pleasure yachts carrying nuclear warheads. Even the International Space Station had been hastily armed with point defense systems. It's not pretty, her tactical officer said, but there's a lot of it. Humanity's specialty, Chen Wei replied. Make do with what you have and make the enemy regret showing up. The Vraks fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system, near the orbit of Neptune. Fleet Commander Kelhath reviewed the sensor data with satisfaction. 1 star, 8 planets. Primitive industrial signatures. This would be quick. Begin the advance, he ordered. Standard conquest formation. Destroy all military assets, then bombardment of the population centers. Make it spectacular. We want the humans in the Council fleet to see what happens when they defy the Dominion. The Vraks fleet moved inward toward Earth, confidently accelerating. Then the first mines detonated. Nuclear explosions bloomed in the darkness, electromagnetic pulses scrambling Vraks sensors. Ships veered off course, colliding with each other. Kelhath watched in fury as the neat formation collapsed into chaos. They mined the outer system? Who does that? His weapons officer shouted, recalculate approach vectors. Move through the gaps, but there were no gaps. The humans had seeded the entire region with weapons. The Vrax force lost 30 ships before they even reached Uranus. As they approached Saturn, the asteroid bases opened fire. Railgun slugs, accelerated by electromagnetic fields powered by fusion reactors, crossed millions of kilometers to strike Vrax ships. The impacts were devastating. One slug hit a Vrax dreadnought's reactor, and the ship vanished in a flash of light that briefly created a new star in the sky. They fortified everything, Kelhath realized. This isn't a primitive species. This is a trap. The human civilian fleet met them at Jupiter. 3,000 ships, most of them unarmed a week ago, now bristling with weapons. They didn't fight with formation or tactics. They swarmed like insects, each ship independently targeting, firing, and moving. Vrax point defense systems were overwhelmed. For every human ship destroyed, they took down a Vrax vessel with them, and the humans just kept coming. Commander Chen Wei watched from Luna as the battle spread across the solar system. The civilian fleet was being massacred, but they were buying time. Time for the hidden weapons to activate. Time for the defensive grid to come fully online. Time for the retired warships from Earth's ocean floors to reach orbit. Ancient vessels from the secret wars that had unified humanity. All stations, she broadcast. The enemy is in the inner system. This is what we trained for. Make them remember Earth. The battle became a nightmare for the Vrax. Every asteroid might hide a railgun. Every piece of orbital debris might be a drone waiting to attack. The humans used kamikaze tactics, ramming attacks, and even cyber warfare, sending viruses through communication channels. The Vrax had expected a quick victory. They found themselves in a grinding battle of attrition against an enemy that refused to quit. On Earth, people watched the battle in the skies above. They saw ships burning. They saw orbital platforms exploding. They saw the flashes of nuclear detonations. And they saw humanity fighting with everything it had. The Vrax reached Mars after losing 400 ships. Half their fleet was gone. They regrouped, preparing for the final assault on Earth. Kelhath stared at the blue planet ahead, so beautiful and so deadly. He had underestimated these humans. They fought like every battle was their last because for them it was. All ships prepare for final assault, he ordered. We end this now. Then Earth's defense grid activated in full. Thousands of satellites revealed their true purpose. Energy weapons, missiles, railguns, and particle beams created a wall of fire around the planet. The Vrax fleet charged forward into hell itself. On Luna, Chen Wei watched the enemy advance. She thought of her father, 8,000 light-years away fighting his own battle. She thought of her mother, safe in a bunker beneath Beijing. She thought of every human who had ever looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. All weapons, she said calmly. Fire. The space around Earth became a storm of light and death. Vrax ships exploded by the dozens. But still they came on, desperate to complete their mission. Human ships threw themselves into the path of Vrax weapons, sacrificing themselves to protect the planet below. The battle raged for 6 hours, the longest 6 hours in human history. When it ended, the Vrax fleet was destroyed. 400 ships reduced to debris orbiting Earth. But the cost was terrible. 60% of humanity's defense fleet was gone. 15,000 crew members dead. The orbital stations were damaged. The moon base was half destroyed. Mars had been bombarded, but Earth survived. Battered, bloodied, but alive. And across every communication channel, a message was sent. Not just to the returning human fleet, but to the entire galaxy. This is Earth, we are still here. And if you come for us again, bring more ships. News of Earth's victory spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. The Vrax had sent their mightiest fleet to destroy humanity's homeworld. And humanity had turned the entire solar system into a weapon. The recordings showed a species that refused to accept defeat, that fought with creativity and desperation in equal measure, that made the enemy pay for every kilometer with blood and fire. Admiral Chen received the message from Earth while organizing a counteroffensive in Council space. He watched the battle recordings in his quarters alone and wept. For the dead, for the survivors, for the daughter who had commanded Luna's defense and lived, for the planet that had given birth to a species too stubborn to die. When he emerged, his officers saw a different man. The professional restraint was gone, replaced by something colder and infinitely more dangerous. The Vrax wanted to send a message by attacking Earth, Chen said quietly. Let's send them an answer. Commander Okonkwo, prepare all Marine forces. We're not just fighting battles anymore. We're ending this war. The combined Human Council fleet launched a series of coordinated strikes against Vrax-occupied territories. But where the Council forces fought to liberate, humans fought to devastate. They didn't just free conquered worlds. They destroyed Vrax infrastructure systematically. Supply depots were obliterated. Communication networks were hacked and corrupted. Military academies were reduced to rubble. Human marines became legendary throughout the galaxy. They didn't retreat. They didn't negotiate. They landed on occupied worlds and fought building to building, street to street, until every Vrax soldier was dead or captured. Major Okonkwo led the assault on Vrax-held Kelthera 3, the planet where the Dominion had established their forward command base. The battle lasted 2 weeks. Vrax forces outnumbered the humans 5-1, but they were fighting an enemy that used tactics the civilized galaxy had forgotten. Humans dug tunnels under Vrax fortifications. They used civilian buildings as cover. They turned the enemy's own weapons against them. They showed no mercy to those who had shown none to others. When Okonkwo planted the UN flag on the command base, she broadcast a message to the Vrax Empress. "You attacked Earth to break our spirit. You only made us angry. Surrender now, or we come for your throne world next." On the Council Sanctuary world, the political situation shifted dramatically. Speaker Norvath, who had argued against human methods, watched as liberated populations celebrated their freedom. The humans had been brutal, yes, but they had also been effective. Worlds that had suffered under Vrax occupation for years were free in weeks. Ambassador Kelth Prime stood before the Council Assembly and spoke words that would reshape galactic politics. "We asked for allies. We received saviors. Yes, humanity fights with violence that shocks us. Yes, their methods violate everything we thought warfare should be. But they answered our call when no one else would. They split their fleet to protect both us and their homeworld. They fight not for conquest, but for justice. We must ask ourselves, what is civilization worth if we refuse to defend it?" The vote was close, but the Council officially requested human assistance in reforming their military doctrine. Thousands of Council warriors began training under human instructors, learning tactics that had been developed over millennia of human conflict. The galaxy was changing, adapting, becoming something new. Empress Zelvara watched her empire crumble. The defeat at Earth had destroyed her best fleet. The loss of forward bases had cut her supply lines. Rebellions erupted on conquered worlds, inspired by human broadcasts showing that the Vrax could be beaten. Her military commanders urged total war, but Zelvara was not foolish. "Request a parley," she ordered, with the human admiral, alone. Admiral Chen met the Vrax Empress on a neutral station with only translators present. Zelvara was massive, 3 meters tall with armored plates and 4 arms built for combat. Chen was a single human, shorter, softer, but carrying himself with the confidence of someone who had nothing left to fear. "You could have been allies," Zelvara said through her translator. "Your species is powerful. We would have offered you a place in the Dominion. Instead, you chose to fight for weaklings who cannot defend themselves." "That's the difference between us," Chen replied. "You see weakness and think exploitation. We see weakness and think protection." The Council called for help and we answered. Not because we want to rule the galaxy, but because it was the right thing to do. "And now you will destroy my empire, turn your brutal methods against my worlds?" Chen was silent for a long moment. "No, we'll accept your surrender. You will return all conquered territories. You will pay reparations. You will stand trial for war crimes. But we won't genocide your species. We won't burn your worlds, because unlike you, we remember what it's like to be the victim." Zelvara studied the human carefully. "You are offering mercy? After we attacked your homeworld?" "We're offering justice. There's a difference. Mercy would be forgetting what you did. Justice is making sure you never do it again, but also making sure you survive to become something better." Chen leaned forward. "We've been where you are, Empress. We've been the conquerors. We've committed atrocities in the name of empire. That's how we know the cost. That's how we know there's another way." The Treaty of Thelvis was signed 3 months later. The Vrax Dominion ceded all occupied territories. War crime tribunals were established, presided over by judges from both Council and human worlds. The Vrax were not destroyed, but they were transformed. Human advisors helped rebuild their government, teaching political systems based on representation rather than conquest. 10 years passed. The galaxy healed. The scars remained, both physical and cultural, but something new grew from them. The Galactic Council was reformed with humanity as a permanent member. Human ships patrolled trade routes, their presence deterring pirates and would-be conquerors. Human military academies trained officers from dozens of species, teaching them both the tactics of war and the ethics of peace. Admiral Chen retired and returned to Earth. He stood in the memorial garden on Luna, where 15,000 names were carved into crystal, one for each defender who had died in the Battle of Sol. His daughter stood beside him, now Admiral herself commanding the Sol Defense Fleet. "Was it worth it?" she asked. "Everything we sacrificed." Chen looked up at the stars, where ships from 100 worlds traveled freely, where species that had been enemies learned to coexist, where children played without fear of conquest. "We answered a call for help from strangers 8,000 light-years away. We could have ignored it. We could have stayed safe on Earth, but we didn't because that's not who we are. And they learned what humanity means," his daughter added. "They learned what humanity can be," Chen corrected. "Both the best and the worst. Our capacity for violence and our commitment to justice, our willingness to fight and our ability to forgive." He touched one of the names on the memorial. These people died defending Earth from an enemy they had never met. They died so that strangers in a distant galaxy could be free. That's the humanity I want the galaxy to remember. Ambassador Kelth Prime visited Earth for the anniversary ceremony. He stood beside Chen, his 6 arms folded in respect. "We called for allies," he said softly. "We thought we were asking for warriors. We didn't realize we were summoning something far more complex. You showed us that the capacity for violence and the capacity for compassion can exist in the same species, that the same hands that build weapons can also rebuild worlds." The galaxy asked, and humanity answered, Chen replied. "Not with angels. Not with demons. With humans. Flawed, stubborn, violent, compassionate humans. We're not perfect, but we try to be better. That's all anyone can ask." New threats continued to emerge from the dark spaces between stars. Pirate fleets, rogue colonies, ancient automated weapons from long-dead civilizations. But when they appeared, they found a galaxy that had learned to fight back. Human Council hybrid warships combining human aggression with Council precision patrolled the frontier. Species that had once been prey had become predators in their own right. The final scene played out in the Council chamber, now relocated to a massive station orbiting Earth. Representatives from 200 species gathered for the anniversary of first contact. They looked different, spoke different languages, thought in different ways, but they shared something now. A common defense, a common purpose, a common motto inscribed on every warship in the galaxy. Never again, never alone. It was humanity's gift to the stars. Not technology, not weapons, not even victory. It was the simple, stubborn promise that when someone calls for help, others will answer. That civilization means more than advancement and prosperity. It means standing together against the darkness. Ambassador Kelth Prime gave the closing speech, his words translated into every language of the Council. "We asked for allies. We received something better. We received humanity. And in learning what humanity means, we learned what we ourselves could become. Not perfect, not peaceful, but willing to fight for what matters. Willing to protect the weak. Willing to answer the call." The assembly rose as one. Species that had been strangers a decade ago, united now in purpose and determination. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed it, not through conquest or domination, but through the simple act of answering a desperate cry for help. And in the darkness between the stars, potential threats watched and learned. The galaxy was no longer divided and weak. It was unified and dangerous. Because when you threaten one species, you now threatened them all. When you picked a fight with anyone, you picked a fight with humanity. And humanity, the galaxy had learned, was not something you wanted to fight.